Welcome to our deep dive into Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind.
Oh, yeah. A really fascinating book.
I know it's ambitious, right?
Definitely ambitious.
I mean, it's basically the entire history of Homo sapiens from, like our earliest days to like the crazy technological world we live in now.
Yeah, and he brings up some really mind-bending stuff.
He does, doesn't he? Like those four revolutions he talks about, they really make you rethink like everything.
They do. They really make you question, like what it means to be human, where we came from, and where we're going.
Exactly. It's like he flips your whole perspective on like humanity on its head. So are you ready to dive in?
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to get into it.
Me too, me too. So let's start with one of the most intriguing ideas in the book. It's this concept of shared myths.
Ah, yes. Myths. Really central to Harari's whole argument.
So he's saying that like our ability to believe in these collective stories, these myths, like religions, nations, even money, like that's actually a key to our success as a species.
That's exactly it. He calls them imagined orders. These abstract concepts that don't have a physical reality, but that we collectively agree to believe in.
Yeah.
And these shared beliefs, these myths, they become the glue that holds societies together.
That's so interesting, right? Because you can't like physically touch democracy or justice, but they have so much power to influence how we act.
Exactly. Think about it. You
Mm.
can't physically touch democracy or justice, but these concepts have the power to motivate people to act in specific ways,
Right.
to build elaborate systems, even to wage wars. This ability to unite around shared beliefs, even intangible ones, gave sapiens a significant edge.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of other species, they just don't have that.
Exactly. It sets us apart. And that brings us to that first revolution that Harari talks about, the cognitive revolution. It's like this big bang moment in human history.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a great analogy.
Right. And it's all about language. It's this sudden emergence of language.
Yeah. And suddenly, like, our ancestors can gossip, they can tell stories, they can plan hunts, they can transmit knowledge across generations.
Exactly. Exactly. And that gives them a huge advantage over other species.
It's like they can cooperate and coordinate in ways that no other species ever could.
That leads to something, pretty heavy to think about, right? It leads to the extinction of other human species like the Neanderthals.
Yeah, that's a hard one to wrap your head around. Like, we might have actually played a role in wiping out another human
I
species.
know. It's a sobering thought. And, there's still debate about how exactly it happened.
Right, there are still a lot of theories.
But the evidence is pointing more and more towards sapiens playing a role in the disappearance of the Neanderthals.
Yeah, it's like this, it highlights this kind of power, like the power of language, but also maybe like our capacity to dominate.
Definitely. Our capacity to dominate, for better or for worse.
Yeah, for better or for worse. So we've got this like superpower of language, right? And it allows us to not just dominate, but also to create these really intricate things like, art and culture and technology. Harari ties it all back to this ability to think symbolically and communicate complex ideas.
Absolutely. And that ability sets the stage for the next major revolution that Harari explores,
Yeah.
the agricultural revolution.
Oh, yeah. The moment when, like, sapiens go from being these nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farmers, right?
Right. And it seems like a positive development on the surface.
Right, right. It's like stability, like a dependable source of food. You can start building more complex societies.
Exactly. But here's where Harari throws us a curveball. He actually calls agriculture a trap.
A trap. I know. It's like, what? How can something so essential, like, be seen as a negative turning point?
Right. It goes against everything we've been taught about progress. But his argument is that agriculture led to longer working hours.
Oh,
Yeah. Longer working hours, a more limited diet, and because you're living in closer proximity to animals and to each other, more disease.
so you're saying that our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they might have actually had it better in some ways.
In some ways, yes. More leisure time, a more diverse diet, potentially less exposure to disease.
Wow. I mean, that really makes you question, our assumptions about progress, right? Like, what does progress even mean?
Exactly. It forces us to re-examine what we consider a good life. And to illustrate this, Harari uses the image of the domestication paradox.
Oh, okay, I've heard of this. So it's like we didn't just domesticate plants and animals, they also domesticated us in a way.
Right, we became tied to the land, dependent on a few staple crops.
And I guess more vulnerable, like if the crops fail.
Exactly, vulnerable to the whims of nature.
So it's kind of like a trade-off, right? You get this security, you get this surplus of food.
But at the cost of freedom and potentially even health.
Yeah. And it's not like he's romanticizing, being a hunter-gatherer. He acknowledges there were challenges there too, right?
Of course. He's not saying it was some kind of utopia.
Right, but he is making us think critically about this shift. Was it truly progress or was it, a deal with the devil?
Yeah, a deal with some unintended consequences that we're still dealing with today.
That's a really fascinating point. So we've gone from small nomadic bands to settled farmers. What's next in this grand story of ours? What brings us together on a larger scale?
Well, Harari says there are three major forces at play here: empires, universal religions, and the invention of money.
So empires kind of brought people together through conquest, religions offered the shared spiritual belief system, and money facilitated trade over long distances.
Right. They all created systems that transcended local boundaries, connecting people across vast distances.
And I guess they're also all kind of like extensions of those shared myths we were talking about, right?
Precisely. They're all based on shared beliefs and values.
And you can see how these forces would like start to connect humanity on a global level, right?
Absolutely. It wasn't always a peaceful process, of course.
No, of course not.
There was a lot of conflict, a lot of competition.
Wars, clashing religions.
But the overall trend was towards greater interconnectedness.
And he uses that really cool example of the Silk Road, right?
Yes. The Silk Road, this incredible network of trade routes spanning like over 4,000 miles. It connected the East and West.
And it wasn't just silk, right? They were trading ideas, religions, technology.
Exactly. And unfortunately also diseases like the Black Death.
Oh, right, right. But it's still just incredible to think about this exchange of goods and ideas happening centuries ago.
It shows that globalization isn't a new phenomenon.
Not at all. So we've gone from these small, hunter-gatherer bands to settled farmers, and now we're seeing these forces that bring humanity together on this global scale.
Those shared myths we were talking about earlier, those imagined orders, they become even more powerful in this era.
Right, like they shape entire civilizations and like the way we think about the world.
Exactly. Harari even states that empire has been the most common form of political organization for the past 2,500 years.
That's a long time.
It is. And think about it. The language we use, the institutions we build, even the way we think about the world, it's all influenced by this long history of empires.
So we've talked about the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and now the forces that kind of brought humanity together on a global scale. What's next in Harari's story?
Well, next up is a revolution that truly upends everything: the scientific revolution.
Okay, now things are getting really interesting.
This is where it all changes in a big way.
The birth of modern science, right?
Exactly. It's a period of incredible intellectual ferment.
It's a huge shift from dogma and tradition to a new way of understanding the world. What does Harari have to say about this big turning point?
Well, what Harari really highlights is this idea that the scientific revolution was fueled by an admission of ignorance.
An admission of ignorance.
Yeah, like instead of clinging to established truths, scientists started saying, we don't know everything. Let's observe, experiment, test our theories against evidence.
So it's like the shift, right, from seeking absolute truth to embracing the unknown.
Exactly. And it had profound implications. It challenged religious authority.
Right.
It spurred all these technological innovations.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it paved the way for the modern world we live in today.
But wasn't the scientific revolution also, kind of intertwined with colonialism and the expansion of European empires?
That's a crucial point that Harari doesn't shy away from.
Yeah.
He argues that European colonialism and scientific exploration were deeply connected, both driven by this desire for knowledge and resources, and also fueled by the emergence of capitalism.
Oh, right, right. Like those joint stock companies that were financing all those voyages of discovery.
Exactly. They were looking for new trade routes, new markets,
Yeah.
new opportunities to make a profit.
So it's a complicated story, right? Like there are these amazing advances in knowledge, but then there's also all this exploitation and, expansion of empires.
Exactly. It's not a simple story of progress.
Yeah.
It's a more intricate tapestry of human ingenuity and also, sometimes human short-sightedness.
It's a good reminder that progress isn't always linear or simple.
Absolutely.
And even our greatest achievements can have this dark side, this unintended consequence.
Definitely. So we've got science and empire, both driven by this emerging force of capitalism. Where does all this take us next in Harari's narrative?
Well, from the scientific revolution, it's the era of factories, machines, and mass production.
Yes, the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
a period of unprecedented change that's still shaping our lives today.
And I bet Harari has some really interesting things to say about this period.
He does. He really digs into the factors that made it happen.
So this is where, like, human ingenuity goes into overdrive, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine a time that's had a more profound impact on how we live.
It truly is a turning point. And Harari points to things like the harnessing of fossil fuels, the development of new machines and technologies, and the rise of factory production.
Right.
All these combine to create this massive increase in productivity and a population explosion.
Yeah, and people start flocking to cities, working in factories, consuming goods at a level never seen before.
Right. It completely reshaped the social landscape.
Yeah. Instead of those rural agrarian societies, you have these urban centers, filled with people working and buying things.
And that brings us to another crucial concept that Harari introduces, the Anthropocene.
Oh, yeah, the
The
Anthropocene.
idea that we've entered a new geological epoch defined by human impact on the planet.
Yeah, it's like we've become this force of nature.
Exactly. We're talking about climate change, deforestation, mass extinctions.
Like we are literally changing the planet.
And Harari presents these startling figures about our energy consumption, our resource use, just the sheer scale of our impact.
It's a bit scary to think about, honestly.
It is sobering because it raises these fundamental questions about our responsibility.
Yeah, how do we manage this power?
Exactly. How do we ensure a sustainable future? It's a huge challenge.
And I know Harari doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but he does make us confront the consequences of our actions, right?
He does. He wants us to think critically about the choices we make, individually and collectively.
And it's not just about the environment, right? Like, the Industrial Revolution also had this huge impact on our social structures, like the way we live and work and relate to each other.
Exactly. Think about the rise of factories, the division of labor, the growth of cities.
Right.
All of those things led to massive changes in families, communities, even how we think about time and space.
It's like it reshaped not just the physical world, but also our social fabric, like our whole way of life.
Precisely. And it's a process that's still unfolding even today.
Oh, absolutely. So we've journeyed from the cognitive revolution to the agricultural revolution, from unification to the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution. Harari's taken us on this amazing journey through, like, the whole history of humanity.
And he doesn't stop there.
I know. He keeps going, right? He doesn't just leave us in the factories.
No, he goes on to explore these future horizons for humanity.
Okay, now we're getting into, like, seriously mind-blowing territory.
We are. He starts talking about bioengineering, artificial intelligence, even the possibility of humans evolving into a whole new species.
Bioengineering, AI, a new human species. It sounds like science fiction.
It does. But Harari argues that these are real possibilities.
Okay, so this is where we leave off for part 1 of this deep dive. Join us next time as we explore the future of humanity and some surprising ethical questions that Harari brings up about our modern world. Welcome back to our deep dive into Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens.
Glad to be back.
I know, right? Last time we went from, early humans all the way to the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, it's quite a journey when you think about it.
It really is. And we were just starting to get into some of the really mind-blowing stuff about the future.
Yeah, like Harari's speculations about bioengineering and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, those are two fields that could really, change, what it even means to be human.
Absolutely. They have that potential.
So he's not just, throwing out random science fiction ideas, is he? These are real things that are happening right now.
No, he's grounding his arguments in real advancements.
Okay, good. Because, I don't want to get too far out there,
No, I understand. He points to things like the creation of synthetic life forms,
Yeah.
like that artificial bacterium mycoplasma laboratorium. That shows we're already manipulating the building blocks of life.
Yeah, and AI is already, beating us at games like Go and chess.
Exactly. Which are incredibly complex games.
Yeah, it's a little unnerving, right? That line between human and machine is starting to blur.
Yeah, for sure. And Harari explores a future where AI could be making big decisions for us, potentially even controlling essential systems like transportation or healthcare.
So you're saying, algorithms could be deciding who gets a loan or even, who gets what kind of medical treatment?
That's the kind of scenario he's talking about, yeah.
Whoa. That brings up a lot of ethical issues, doesn't it? What happens to, human choice and control if algorithms are making all the decisions?
Exactly, and those are precisely the questions that Harari wants us to think about. He's really challenging us to consider those consequences before these technologies become so embedded in our lives that we can't, untangle them.
Right, right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new technology and not really think about the long-term effects.
Definitely. He's urging us to be proactive, not just reactive.
I think that's a really important point.
I agree. And, it's easy to see those dystopian sci-fi scenarios where AI takes over and think, oh no, that's what's going to happen.
Right, like we all see those movies.
But, Harari doesn't just focus on the negatives.
Okay, go.
He also highlights the potential benefits.
Okay, so like what kind of benefits?
Imagine AI helping us solve really complex problems, like climate change,
Oh, okay, yeah.
or developing more personalized medicine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's about finding that balance, understanding the risks, but also harnessing the potential for good.
Right, so like being thoughtful and proactive instead of being scared of the future.
Exactly. And, he takes it a step further, too.
Oh no, where does he go from there?
He suggests that humans could actually evolve into an entirely new species, something he calls Homo Deus.
Homo Deus, a whole new species.
It sounds pretty out there.
It does sound pretty out there.
But when you think about the possibilities of bioengineering and AI, it's not as crazy as it sounds.
Okay, so like we could enhance ourselves with technology, maybe even merge with it.
That's the idea. We could take human evolution into our own hands.
Wow. But then would we even be human anymore?
That's a question that philosophers have been debating for centuries. But now, because of technology, that question is becoming really real, really urgent.
Yeah, it's like, what does it even mean to be human in a world like that? It's a really profound question.
It is. And, Harari asks this powerful question, what do we want to want?
What do we want to want? I love that. It's like, it's not just about what we can do, but also about like what we should do, what we value.
Right. What kind of future do we want to create?
Yeah.
It forces us to examine our values and aspirations.
So we've talked about the potential for bioengineering and AI to completely reshape humanity. It's really mind-blowing stuff. But Harari doesn't just focus on these futuristic scenarios, right? He also critiques the world we've already built.
You're right. He has some really thought-provoking things to say about modern society.
Yeah, like I'm curious to hear what he thinks isn't working so well? Like, has all this progress actually made us happier?
That's one of the key questions he raises.
Okay, so where does he see those cracks in the facade of our modern, technologically advanced world?
One of his most pointed critiques is about consumerism.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
He argues that this capitalist consumerist ethic has become like a religion,
Okay.
where we're constantly told to indulge, to buy more, to upgrade.
Right, like we need the latest gadgets and experiences to be happy.
Exactly. He suggests we're trapped on this hedonistic treadmill,
Oh, I've heard of that.
always striving for more, but never truly satisfied.
Yeah, you get the new phone, you're happy for a little bit, and then you need the next new thing.
Exactly. And that ties into another concept he talks about, the happiness paradox.
The happiness paradox. Okay, I haven't heard that one.
It's the idea that despite all our material wealth, we're not necessarily any happier.
Wait, really? But we have like way more stuff than people did even a few decades ago.
We do. But happiness levels haven't really gone up.
That's so interesting. So like we're richer, we have more technology, but we're not actually any happier.
That's the paradox. It makes you wonder if maybe our relentless pursuit of more has come at the expense of something deeper.
It makes sense, right? Like maybe we've lost sight of what really matters.
Yeah. And, it's not just about our own individual happiness either.
Okay.
Harari also raises ethical concerns about how we treat animals, especially those raised for food in industrial agriculture.
Oh yeah, that's another area where progress has had some pretty bad side effects.
It has. He doesn't sugarcoat the reality of factory farms.
Yeah, like those images can be really disturbing.
They are. And he wants us to confront that, to think about the ethical implications of what we choose to eat.
I mean, it's easy to just not think about it, right? When you don't see those animals, when they're hidden away in those farms.
But he brings it into the light.
Yeah.
He forces us to confront it.
So we've explored these futuristic possibilities with bioengineering and AI, and we've delved into some of Harari's critiques of the modern world.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, it's a lot to digest.
It is. So this is where we'll conclude part 2.
Okay.
Be sure to join us for part 3, where we'll wrap up our exploration of Sapiens with some key takeaways and some final thought-provoking questions.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Sapiens. Whew, we've covered a lot.
We have.
It's been like a whirlwind tour through human history.
From the dawn of our species to, like, the potential for a future with bioengineered humans and, super intelligent AI.
Yeah, and we've talked about those incredible achievements, but also, some of the not so great parts of the world we've created.
The downsides of progress, right?
Exactly. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
Like, it can feel a little overwhelming, to be honest.
I understand.
Like, how do we even begin to make sense of it all?
Well, I think Harari would say that the first step is to cultivate what he calls mental flexibility.
Mental flexibility. Okay, I like that. What does that mean exactly?
It's about being open to new ideas, questioning our assumptions, and being ready to adapt to a world that's changing really fast.
Right, because the world is changing so fast these days.
It is. And clinging to old beliefs or ways of thinking, that's not going to cut it anymore.
No, not at all. We need to be able to learn and evolve, be ready for whatever comes next.
Exactly, because the future isn't set in stone, right? It's shaped by the choices we make, the stories we tell, the things we value.
Yeah, that's a really empowering thought, actually.
It is, and in a world where technology is advancing so rapidly, that kind of mental flexibility is even more important.
But how do we do that? Like, there's so much information out there, so many different opinions. It's easy to get lost in all the noise.
That's true, but that's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay, yeah, critical thinking, but how do we actually develop that skill?
Well, it starts with being a careful consumer of information, right?
Right.
You have to evaluate what you read and hear, consider different perspectives, and learn to separate fact from fiction.
That's so important, especially in the age of social media and fake news.
Absolutely. Don't just accept everything you see at face value. Ask questions, do your research, form your own informed opinions.
So you're saying we should be a little bit skeptical, not just believe everything we hear.
Exactly. And be aware of your own biases, too.
Oh, right, because everyone has biases.
We do.
Yeah.
And those biases can affect how we see the world.
It's like we all need to develop these, mental filters,
Yeah.
to help us sort through all the information overload and figure out what's really true and important.
That's a great way to put it. We need those filters.
Okay, so mental flexibility, critical thinking, what else? What other tools do we need to navigate this complex world?
Well, Harari also emphasizes the importance of humility.
Humility.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Oh, okay, yeah, like being open to learning new things.
Exactly. And being willing to admit when we're wrong.
Which can be hard sometimes.
It can be. But it's essential.
Yeah.
Because our understanding of the world is always changing and evolving.
So it's like we need to be lifelong learners.
Right.
Always open to new information.
Exactly. And we need to remember that we're all interconnected.
Oh, yeah, that's a big theme in Sapiens.
It is. Harari emphasizes how our actions, even small ones, can have ripple effects.
Like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah, kind of like that. Our choices affect not just ourselves, but also other people, the environment, the future.
So it's not just about, looking out for number one, but also thinking about the bigger picture, the long-term consequences.
Right. It's about understanding that we're all part of this web of life and recognizing our responsibility to future generations.
That's a powerful thought. We have the power to shape the future.
We do. And it's a responsibility we should take seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. So this deep dive into Sapiens has been really incredible.
It's a fascinating book.
It's made us think about, the big questions, where we came from, where we're going.
And who we want to be.
Exactly. It's challenged us to think differently about history, about progress, about, the whole human story.
And about our role in shaping the future.
Yeah. And to all our listeners out there, we highly recommend checking out Sapiens for yourselves.
It's a book that will stay with you.
It will. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, too. Join the conversation. Keep exploring these ideas because, the future is not something that just happens to us.
We have the power to create it.
We do. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep diving.